Hello everyone. I'm talking about the great prophet of matriarchy and the right hand of Mother God, William Bond, my friend and partner in working for matriarchy, and reading one of his articles about the difference between how we look at a mother god and a father god, maternal religion, goddess religion, and patriarchal religion. He didn't give a name for this, so I'm going to call it Mother God versus patriarchal religion, I guess. At the dawn of history, there were many myths about a golden age in the past where people lived in peace, harmony, and had everything they wanted or desired. To quote from ancient Greek myths, the first age was an age of innocence and happiness. Truth and right prevailed, though not enforced by law, nor was there any magistrate to threaten or punish. The forest had not yet been robbed of its trees to furnish timbers for vessels, nor had men built fortifications around their towns. There were no such thing as swords, spears, or helmets. The earth brought forth all things necessary for man without his labor in plowing or sowing. Perpetual spring rain, flowers sprang up without seed, the rivers flowed with milk and wine, and yellow honey distilled from the oaks. That's a quote from ancient Greek myths. There were similar myths all over the world in places like South America and China. One of these myths is the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve lived a life of harmony before it went wrong. This is an old story that predates Judaism and comes from ancient Babylon. So that's where the culprit came from, huh? About the apple and all that, and Eve making mankind fall, came from Babylon. The interesting thing about this is that archaeologists have discovered ancient Neolithic towns and cities that support these Golden Age stories. The archaeologist Maria Gimbutas has written a number of books about this. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Maria Gimbutas. She was a Lithuanian, like me. She points out that in the excavations of Neolithic towns and cities, archaeologists could find very little evidence of conflict, war, and violence. While at the same time there were no big houses for the rulers of rich people, of all the houses were the same, suggesting that people then lived in an equal society. Yes, I remember that very clearly. That's me talking, I remember that. At that time, the people worshipped the Great Mother, whom gave birth to the world. Then, at the beginning of the Bronze Age, all of this suddenly changed when people began to worship gods. And then archaeologists discovered evidence of extreme violence and the start of hierarchical societies in the Bronze Age layers, where defensive walls were built around towns and cities and images of extreme brutality were found. Large palaces and temples were also built with a minority living in large houses and the rest of the people living in poverty. See, that's what happens when that's the beginning of patriarchy. That's the modus operandi of patriarchy. That's the style, that's the way of patriarchy. So why would society live in peace, harmony, and equality when they worship the Great Mother, but we had conflict and violence when people began to worship male gods? The reason is that when we worship God in the form of a mother, we easily imagine her giving us all unconditional love and everything we desire. Yes, I agree with that. If we accept ideas like we create our own reality, then believing in a supreme and powerful deity that loves us all unconditionally means we all have a positive attitude about the world we live in. This then makes it easier for us to create a positive reality for ourselves without trying. People then wouldn't have to learn about positive thinking because just being taught about the Great Mother who loves them all unconditionally was enough. Then people decided to have sexual equality and worship male gods as well. Unfortunately, male gods, as we have seen throughout the patriarchal age, create negative thinking. This is because men are more conditional in their love as well as being more aggressive and assertive. So people begin to introduce negativity into their lives when they worship male gods. It goes together. Male gods, male religion is part of them. They project their own feeling. This is me talking. They project their own desires, their own instincts, their own needs, their own images. They make God a man. And then in some of them, they make female goddesses, but they turn, like the goddess of Athena, she was the goddess of wisdom. They gave her another title, the goddess of war. So they add on war. They add on their rules. They add on their regulations. They add on their hate of women. They add on war, 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 hate of women, war, hate of women, war, hate of women. Double standard, punish women, punish women, punish women. That's all becomes inveigled in their religions, you know? All that evil they put inside their religions. Then other problems were that people no longer had faith in a male god's unconditional love. The concept of a male god's unconditional love created negativity which would be made worse when male priests exploited this by telling worshippers that God was angry because they didn't do what the priests wanted. Yeah, priests can be crazy. They're having sex with altar boys and each other, and then you go into the confession booth and tell them you masturbated, and they tell you, oh, bad. Shouldn't do that. They rape children, and then they tell you you're evil because you watched pornography, and yet they're raping children. So you see, that's patriarchal. That's patriarchal religion. Obviously not all of them. I'm happy about the priests who have common law wives. Many of them did until 90% of them became homosexual at one period of time. It just seems like, I'm not against homosexuals, but I'm against the fact that they won't ordain women and they won't let the priests get married. They should let the priests get married and they should ordain women. And 90% of their problems would be solved in the Catholic Church, wouldn't they? So when, I'll continue reading William Bond's argument. So when the prayers to these male gods no longer worked because of negativity surrounding these gods, their priests made excuses and blamed others, including the goddess worshippers. Always blame the goddess. Blame women, right? For everything. So the blame game would create even more negative thoughts and feelings and also hate and violence, as the male priests encouraged their followers to not only blame the goddess worshippers but to hate them as well. This is because they were competitive and saw the goddess worshippers as the opposition. So the negative thoughts and ideas coming from the god worshippers would also create negative feelings in the goddess worshippers when they encountered God worshippers. So God versus goddess, in other words. Unfortunately, people then wouldn't have any concept of positive and negative thought. All they knew was that everything had suddenly gone wrong and no one was sure why. The male priests would be sure whom to blame for what was going wrong, when that would be everyone except themselves. While the holy women would be confused and uncertain because they never encountered a situation like this before. Yeah, they get you confused when they brainwash you. From the time you're a child, they brainwash you. Sure, you get confused. So the male priests saw this as an opportunity in which to exploit and used aggression, violence, deception, and propaganda to get what they want. Oh, males always have and always will use those methods, won't they? I mean, I just saw a documentary about Mussolini, and he had, one of his edicts was, the new brainwashing was, Il Duce, that was his nickname, is always right. He's always right. Yeah, right. Took away everybody's freedoms, took away, it was all brainwashing, take over. You know, Hitler learned from Mussolini, I found out. I thought that Mussolini got his ideas from Hitler. But Hitler got his ideas from Mussolini. Mussolini had been doing what he was doing for 10 strong years before Hitler jumped into the bandwagon as a tyrant and as a dictator, which I had not known until I saw this documentary a few days ago. Okay. So the male priests saw this as an opportunity in which to exploit and use aggression and violence to get what they want. Yet in spite of this, the goddess religion continued for thousands of years. The reason was that the people who stayed with the original religion of the Great Mother were still and created a positive reality for themselves that the priests could not touch. To be continued.